transition. Here we are. GloucesterCast 380. We're banging them out.
Number.
We are banging them out. We have, by special request, we have Ron Gilson back with us because he had such a powerful
Golf club?
re-debut, we'll call it. He's been on hiatus, traveling the world, and he's back now. Though we have Jimmy Dalpiaz with us,
Good morning, Gloucester.
Ron Gilson with us. You can say hi, Ron.
Hi.
There's a video. That's your camera.
Oh,
right there. There you go. Scottie Mack is with us.
Where's my camera?
Your camera's there too, buddy.
Okay, all right.
And Pat Dalpiaz is under the weather.
A little bit.
I am gonna have to get my computer and completely disinfect
This is
it.
why I'm out here in the hinterlands.
You're in the hinterlands over there, but your fingers are all over my keyboard. I'm totally fucked.
Speaking of weather, what is the weather today, Joe?
Weather is for this year unseasonably mild. Is that right? Would we say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Fourth warmest January on record.
Is that what they're saying?
It is. It was 5. Now we're at 4.
I still don't. We talk about this almost every week. I still don't want to jinx it because 5 years ago when we had that monstrous winter,
2015.
we got all the way through January with barely a drop of snow, and then it just kept coming.
Yeah.
So I don't want to jinx it because I remember saying to Kate, we're basically home free. We only got like another month of winter, and then it just came and came and came. So
Well, you've just got another week or two, and then you'll be sitting with all the sun and everything else, and what do you care what the S word is?
I can't.
When is Groundhog Day?
Is it March?
It's this
First?
Sunday.
February
It's,
2nd.
Oh, February
Yeah.
2nd?
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So wow. Okay, so
So Mark Ring was here earlier, and Mark Ring comes in, and it's like he always has a scripted like monologue whenever he comes into the office with the fishermen.
you should talk about this.
Well, not for us, but he had for the fishermen. That's usually his audience in the office, and me and Frank and whoever else is here. But his monologue today was that this may be the least publicized Super Bowl that he could remember ever, and I think we all agree that that's probably the case, especially in our area, and the reasons we come up with right after championship weekend, which was almost 2 weeks ago. We had the Astros cheating scandal.
Right.
That dominated the headlines.
The firing of all the managers.
The firing of all the managers. That dominated the headlines. Now we have Kobe Bryant and the impeachment hearings.
Yes.
So it's pretty crazy because the Super Bowl is generally, I mean,
Super Bowl. What
Super
can
Bowl.
you say about that?
Yeah,
That's-
pretty amazing.
that's
I think, you know
the
what?
biggest stage.
Now that I think of it, they've even shown one commercial out there with the Boston Park the Cars, and it's Hyundai commercial.
Hyundai, yeah, Big Papi,
Yeah.
Chris Pratt,
Well,
John Krasinski from The Office.
right. So one or two
All
commercials.
locals from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
One or two commercials are they're showing that maybe to drum up a little interest to saying, because everyone talks about, I don't care about the Super Bowl sometimes, I just want to see the commercials.
I was wondering if they taped it thinking the Super Bowl was going to include Boston. I mean, they must have taped that a while ago. It was originally going to be a Super Bowl commercial.
Oh, really?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Probably. I mean, there's usually a good chance of it. So
Right.
Oh, speaking of that, we saw last night a Jordan's Furniture commercial where he's talking about all the different things he's selling, and in the middle of him selling his product, the phone rings, and he goes, "Oh, hi, Tom. How can I help you?" And he's going on this way, and finally he says at the end, "Sure, we can do that, but could you tell us where we're going to deliver everything to?"
Oh, funny.
And then he looks at the camera and he smiles, and I went, "Well, you know."
I read a report this morning that they're living in Manhattan right now. Did you see what Gronk said last night in this press conference?
Oh.
I didn't see that.
No, I did not see that.
Scary. So Gronk, who is just chipping away at he was the most. He could have just retired and been like the most lovable guy. Big Papi's pretty lovable. Bobby Orr, lovable. Guys in Boston sports history. He's like what he did last year, like stringing them along, knowing he was going to retire but not announcing it, and then this year saying he's going to have a huge press announcement right before the season was going to start, and then he said, "Oh, we're having a big Super Bowl party. Come down to our Super Bowl party." And then he did
the CBD.
then he got everybody riled up again, and he announced his affiliation with the CBD company. But yesterday he is in the press for the Super Bowl, the press media row, and he says, and I don't necessarily disagree with him, but his thought. They asked him about what Tom Brady should do or what he thinks he's going to do, and he said that Tom Brady has earned every right to explore free agency and see what's out there, which is absolutely the truth. But I didn't realize this morning. They said that if Tom Brady goes to free agency, his salary is going to be counted. There's going to be a double cap hit on the salary cap for the Patriots, or the cap hit, however it works. What's going to happen is it's going to make however the cap works, it's going to greatly increase the chance that the Patriots move on from him. Because there's something that gets triggered that will exponentially increase the odds that he actually plays someplace else, because the Patriots are all about value and numbers and stuff like that. And if they think that they can get a player that can perform 80% as well for 40% of the cost, now if he goes to free agency, the perceived cost to the team, if he goes to free agency, would double,
But that comes at a cost too. I mean, no matter who they put in the quarterback role, if he does move on, it's going to impact them significantly in season ticket sales and merchandising and all the other stuff that goes along with that. So I mean, you got to watch that line too.
Yeah, they say he had the number 2 selling jersey, I think, this past.
But don't you think that he had some sort of clause in his contract where he took those pay cuts for all those years so he could have weapons to throw to receivers, tight ends, and stuff, and they didn't produce that.
That's not true. I don't believe that's true.
So
in the beginning of the season, there were articles being written in the beginning of the season about how there was an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver spot. Mohamed Sanu was supposed to be a stud. Mm-hmm. Josh Gordon, when he performed, was a stud. He was on the roster. Yeah. Antonio Brown was there. He was a stud. You couldn't predict that Antonio Brown was going to self-implode.
No, you got a point there. At the beginning of the season, unstoppable.
They were the first 2 games. We were already writing checks for the Super Bowl tickets.
Yeah.
So that rhetoric, which mainly comes from the Boston sports media, because they want to act like they're not trying to do the right thing all the time, when they always are trying to do the right thing, in my opinion.
But my question is, why would Brady take those pay cuts all those years to do that?
I believe that they have a way around it, and to get him the money.
And does that come the last year in bonuses, which can with the salary cap?
I have this is my theory, and it's a cynical kind of theory.
That's a full circle question I'm asking. Do you think during the salary cap, you should have double cap? Is that going to impact that in the decision-making process maybe this season?
I think that, how he took the less pay cuts every year? I think that they find ways to get, I think that just like presidents that or congresswomen or congressmen, that they have $190,000 salary, but after a couple of terms, they're worth $200 million. I think that there are ways to funnel money to these people that aren't necessarily through their salary. So I think say you're a president, right? And you make $190,000, whatever. I don't know what the number is. Say $500,000, whatever it is. It's not really what they're making though, right? So if someone wanted to make a book deal and say, we're going to give you a book deal for $5 million, if you sign up for the publishing thing. And even if the books, even if they didn't sell a single book, he gets the check for $5 million.
So the salary cap stays within. He takes the pay cut, and the side deals like the book
And
make up for what the pay cut
advertising,
is.
TB12,
even if it's never sold.
TB12 having their facility at the.
That's a good point.
I mean, I'm not sure if that's how it works, but that's my theory.
You've got a couple of comments from Craig on this topic.
Oh, hi, Craig.
Oh, Craig says the Pat's arrogance is why they took Antonio Brown. They thought he would fall in line, and we're suckers.
And
Everybody knew AB was a time bomb. Everyone. I agree with
and
Craig.
they may not want to take the hit and lose him, so they may take a 2-year deal, and he or his wife will accept.
Well, Antonio Brown is
Top
now
a little
on a different line. He's in jail getting meals.
Yeah. I think that. I think.
Together.
My guess would be if I'm Giselle Bundchen, right, and living in Brookline, which Boston to Giselle Bundchen is not no disrespect to our friends because I love the city of Boston, but it is an absolute probably a third tier town compared to some of the cities that she could be accustomed and has the wealth to live in, like a New York City. In LA, the suburbs of LA, she could live. I mean, they could live wherever they wanted to live, right? Boston, living in Brighton, it's in the middle of in the winter or whatever. Not exactly, or Newton or whatever, wherever they live. I'm not even sure where they live, but was it Brighton or
Brookline?
Brookline.
Not exactly.
Lots of fur coats.
But Giselle Bundchen, worldly woman making all the money.
That's not,
I wouldn't be shocked if
doesn't add up.
and her she's probably still trying to hang on to her supermodel thing. Where are the gigs? New York City, the closest places, right? I don't know. It's just my theory that Tom Brady doesn't owe this city anything. I know that I'm in the minority when I say I wish that they would move on from him and not overpay him right now. I wish that he would have retired last year after they won the Super Bowl. But I wish that they would move in. I wish they would take in a good young quarterback for a third of his salary, groom him, and build and understand that we may not have a Super Bowl year next year, but we're gonna start the rebuilding process because you only got a couple. You really legitimately would potentially only have a couple years with Tom Brady, regardless. And to overpay him to just because he's Tom Brady, when there are probably 6 or 7 better quarterbacks in the league right now, I would rather not.
So should he hang it up or should he go to another team? Should he not play or should he play? Because,
I would say what that's he's earned. I agree with Gronk as much as I hate hearing it. I agree with Gronk. He's earned if he wants to play. I can't imagine why he still wants to play, other than wanting to prove that he can do it. That he can do it. Right, he has that he can do it without Belichick. That it wasn't that he was the reason, not necessarily Belichick. Because
they might have something to prove there.
I agree. They're probably like an old married couple that are tired. They're tired of little things build up over time.
Well, Montana gave him the advice of don't do it, don't move on.
Yeah.
And he did.
And Eli just shut down.
Kids.
Eli said, "I'm a Giant, not going to play for them. I'm not even going to look anywhere else." I've been saying it all along. I've been saying way back, check all the things. He wants to go look at check free agency, and that's why I firmly believe he's going to play somewhere else. I firmly believe.
Up until Gronk's statements, I was in the other camp that this is all smoke and mirrors and he was going to re-sign with the Patriots, and now I'm 50-50.
Well, that's up for debate.
Where are you? Where are you thinking he do you think he plays the Patriots somewhere else or nowhere next year?
Robert Kraft has publicly stated that he has every intention of signing Brady. So it's if they could come to terms with the agency and the money. That's all. That's what it comes down to. I don't think that the rumors of him selling his house, it is for sale, but it hasn't been sold yet and moving out.
Yeah, that doesn't. To me, that doesn't.
But that's a $40 million house that keeps dropping by $3 million because you can't just sell a house like that overnight.
Right. No,
You have to have it on the market. There's not that many people in the world that could come over here and say, I want to buy Tom Brady's house for $40 million and have the means to do so. So with him selling that and the rumors that he's not coming here because he sold his house,
means
totally
nothing.
false.
Means
nothing.
That means I agree. That means that means nothing to me.
So
Rob,
I say
where do you
leave it up
fall?
for debate.
You leave it. So you don't. You have. No,
I'm on 50-50 with
you're
you.
50-50 with me.
I'm not that familiar with this whole subject you're talking about, but I sit back here and I listen and I say to myself, Frank Sinatra was one of the greatest, if not the greatest entertainers in the world. And he hung around so long that he was starting to forget the lyrics and so forth. Sometimes you have to know when to quit. Every politician has his day. Entertainers, and I consider sports figures entertainers, they all have their day. And, maybe...
He performed at a high level this past year, despite with not having weapons, and more than the weapons to me was the offensive line in shambles. I think that was a greater cause, not having enough time to find open receivers.
He did not have any help.
He didn't have any help, but I think that like everybody points to the receivers and the running back because they're sexy. They're much sexier to talk about. I believe that the majority of his problems stemmed from
out of the pocket too soon because of the line couldn't find his receivers in time.
Yeah.
No help. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, there we go. I'm gonna let you have the floor with your pitch for the Rose Baker Senior Center.
Fine. Can I go?
Go for that. Yeah, that topic right there.
Great. Yesterday I had a conversation with Lucy Sheehan, who is the director of the Rose Baker Senior Center, and I explained my request. The Rose Baker Senior Center entertains its clientele, if you will, its members, 3 times a month on Mondays, 1 to 3, with the Old Salty Jazz Band. Now, I've known that they've been in existence for years, and I never attended, but several weeks ago I went for the first time. And the band consists of about 10 musicians, and it's led or organized by a fellow by the name of Dave Sagg, a great bass player, plays at the Rum Line every week, I guess, Joe. And, the band is just a fantastic group of musicians. They're all old guys, but they're all talented, very talented musicians. I know some of them. Years ago, I played with some of them. And I could mention names, but I don't know all the names, and it wouldn't be fair. But problem, as I went in that big hall and the band was knocking themselves out, there was no audience, not even someone to dance with, and the dance floor is open. And I'll tell you right now, as a musician myself over the years, believe me, the ultimate for a musician is to have an audience. They perform before an audience. Without an audience, it's just an empty room. And these talented men deserve that. So I talked with Lucy yesterday, and I said, if I got the authority to go out and try and promote this a little bit, and she gave me carte blanche authority, and I'm here today as the first salute. Thanks to Joey Ciaramitaro and Good Morning Gloucester, and I just urge seniors or anyone to come in off the street on a Monday afternoon at 1 o'clock, 1 to 3, and dance for free and hear the best music that's being offered on KPN by talented musicians. It's a great venue, and we should take advantage of it, and I'm looking forward to pumping it up.
That's excellent. So that's the first 3 Mondays
of every month. Yep.
From 1 to 3.
1 to 3.
All right. Thank you, Ron, for that. That's
and is
excellent.
there an admission charge?
What's that?
Is there a ticket price or an admission
No,
charge?
it's free.
That's
You
what I
walk
thought,
in,
yeah.
And they'll even give you a cup of coffee at break time, 1:30, 2 o'clock or so. By the way, in the last couple of weeks I've been there, we've had Gordon Baird as an entertainer for the first 2 or 3 numbers, and I gotta tell you,
Throw up.
he's a zany guy, but he's a very talented guy, and he puts over a song. Anyway, come on down and,
Wow.
and
What a
be
You're a
entertained.
sellout. Scottie.
Yes.
Props to you on your tremendous performance when we went to as the host when we did the interview at Mom's Kitchen. So
Thank you.
So if anybody, I'm going to link to the Mom's Kitchen interview that we did on premises, first look video. Got a tremendous response online, but you did a great job hosting it. They're looking to open up on next Monday.
Yeah,
So
coming right up.
yeah, coming right up. So we're hoping to. It really depends on my work schedule. If I can get away Sunday morning, we're gonna do a lot. We're gonna do the podcast live.
Can I thank you back for the opportunity
There you go.
to do that? Because I want to say that was my first ever interview. I've never done an interview before.
Really?
And that was my first.
You're
and
natural.
And you never forget your first, Joey.
That's what they say. So that's
So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll put a link in the show notes. If you haven't heard about it or seen it, there's the picture. We did a whole tour
It's exciting.
upstairs and downstairs, and they've been really good to us. So we're gonna. Well, what do I always say to the people that are good to us? We try to pay them back tenfold.
Absolutely.
That's our goal. Like the people that when we pimp them and they don't give us breakfast goodies, you don't hear from them again.
So are we telling everybody to show up there for Monday or
They're
Tuesday
dead to us.
this week?
Well, we're gonna be there Sunday morning, but if I don't have work, and I think it calls for bad weather, but I'm not sure. So to do a live podcast, but I don't think they're gonna have their permit to open until Monday. So I think the first day that they open, I don't know that we can take all this. I'd rather them have seats to sell
to
food
people.
and
Absolutely.
recoup some of that money that they're putting into that.
Yeah,
place.
but the bottom line is more seating. I saw the whole new grill area. That's going to be great. And they have Wi-Fi. And that's like 3 big selling points that for anyone coming in. But
And
there'll be more to follow.
How about parking, Jimmy?
Well,
It's better. It's a better situation there.
I
oh,
believe so.
definitely.
There you go. You had a couple of happy birthdays to put up.
Yeah. So a very special happy birthday going out to your friend Joe and mine.
Our friend.
The place where you actually got engaged. If a lot of people do not know this, I'm sure you've talked about it many times on the podcast. But for the element of surprise, I was told you chose the Crow's Nest in Gloucester.
That's right. Yeah.
And the happy birthday today goes out from the entire, me personally, and the entire Good Morning Gloucester crew to Mary Ann Shatford.
Yes.
So happy birthday to Mary Ann Shatford.
We love Marianne. She's been so good to us.
And another a local lobsterman actually and roommate of mine, Larry Hudson. So happy birthday to Larry Hudson
Larry.
as well.
Happy birthday to you, Larry.
There you go.
And Joey Foote.
And yes,
and Joey Foote.
Which
That's
I
true.
said-
Joey Foote.
Mhm.
Joey
Thank
Foote.
you, Pat.
Yeah,
Thank you for
welcome.
that. That's very good.
We saved the best for last, Joey.
There you go. I wanted to mention the left, right, center tournament at the Elks. You want to speak to that?
Sure. Left, right, center is a dice game that's played, and it's tournament style. They do a scholarship for the Elks Scholarship Fund with a 50-50 raffle. Food available from Yellow Sub Shop for purchase, and they do have a cash bar. It's put on by Corey Kukuru from the Bridge Cape Ann. It's now going into, I want to say, its 5th or 6th year.
Yeah,
And-
we've gone a couple times.
They are
It is-
so much fun.
It is a great time, and they sell out. So
Yeah.
you
It's
should
close
go.
to being sold out, I believe.
I'm sure. I bet you it is. So if don't leave the podcast. But as soon as the podcast is over, go online and get order your tickets from the Bridge.
There's a link on Corey Kukuru's page or on the bridgecapeann.com.
The Bridge
They can get tickets on there. I will be the MC and DJ for the evening.
It's a great time.
It's fun because it's almost like I say like a wrestling match when it gets down to the final tables in the bracket.
Yep. I've been there.
Entrance music.
I've been there. I was on the final
And they
table.
request their
So
own
was I.
entrance music.
I was too.
You got there too?
Yeah, I got there.
So
I
much
got
fun.
there.
So Jim, what would you request for entrance music if you were to make it to the final table and you were coming in to roll some dice? What would be your entrance music?
Oh, probably something, I don't know, West Side Story. Something, they're shooting the dice down in the city streets. I don't know.
Ron, how about you? What would you choose for entrance music?
Dude, I know what
a
he-
musician.
I'm not a gambler, if you will.
He would do some kind of band. He used to be playing a banjo band, so it'd be like some
Were
kind
you in
of.
the Union Hill Banjo Band?
Yeah.
I remember them.
Do you
Yes,
really?
I do. With
That was his coffee shop.
with Robert Wynot.
Borden Wynot, yes, he came aboard later.
He was part of it though. Yeah, so I do remember the Union Hill Banjo Band.
That was his place. He started the Union Hill coffee shop. Yeah.
And I understand that you have some more history for us today too. Is coming up.
I do.
Yeah.
So Joey, for your entrance music, what would you choose?
Probably the Gloucester till the end song.
Oh, awesome.
The podcast
The
song.
podcast song, yeah. The
Yeah, I
theme
was
for the
thinking
podcast.
something more along the lines of like maybe Tumbling Dice from Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a good one. See, Scottie has Ron is
That's
an
his-
encyclopedia
yeah.
of Gloucester
Yeah,
history.
Scottie's got
Scottie,
the-
like
yeah.
his DJ, he's like.
Well,
like
nobody
this.
asked, but I'd go with When You Wish Upon a Star.
That's a good one, Pat.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
good one, right?
We were gonna get to that,
I
but
know. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
You seem like you're feeling a little better, Pat.
Yes.
Starting to
Being proactive.
She started.
She has a flask.
So Joe, that's February
in that
1st.
jacket.
She's got.
That's this Saturday coming.
This Saturday, February
Yeah.
1st, and tell people where they can buy the tickets again.
TheBridgeCapeBand.com and then on the Facebook page or Corey Kukuru's page as well.
There you go. If there's an event over the course of the year that I say you 100% you'd have a good time.
You got to try it
We'll
once.
be at
gotta
capacity. We will be at full capacity.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your tickets already, we recommend after the podcast.
Yeah.
Go on and grab them.
Yeah, do that. So we just have a few more things of business because I want to really hand the floor over to Ron, but he's going to take a while. So I want to just get the bang out a couple of other pieces of business. Okay, this is something I want to talk about because there's so much sickness going around. I want to give a couple of what we're going to go around and we're going to talk about what our home remedies would be, and I think that people should take advantage of every single thing that they could
That's a
take
great
advantage
idea.
of.
Yeah.
Right now, definitely go get vaccinated if you haven't been vaccinated. I mean, it's stupid not to. The science proves it out, okay? But there is, so Kate's sister, Erin, my sister-in-law, who's a teacher, her school system, all the teachers have been taking elderberry, which is available at the Common Crow. And they have a ton of kids that are out with the flu. Not one of the teachers has
Like
got
gummies, or what are they?
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
Felicia's going to get it for us today, and we're gonna be starting the elderberry. So there's that. So who brought up the thing at Savour Wine and Cheese?
Scott.
Yeah,
Scottie.
so I was given some information that a very good friend of mine's daughter has had the flu, strain B this season, and she had recommended going to the Savory and getting the marrow. It's like a marrow that you can get. I think you can only get it there, to be honest. Actually,
I haven't heard about it anywhere else, but bone marrow, some
I
type
think
of.
it's a bone marrow.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you on that one. Just for maybe Sunday's podcast, we'll do a follow up.
Yeah, we'll follow up on it, but
Oh,
know
yeah,
that you
that's a
can
good
go
idea.
there, and if you say bone marrow something,
That's
they'll
good for
know
the
what you.
nutrients to
Yeah.
help fend off the flu. It gets all that stuff, into you that you need as your body's fighting.
Right, and my go-to is Adele's gumbo from Passports, which is when you talk about bone marrow, they throw all the bones
Oh,
into the stock pot with the veggies, and
that sounds like a win-win.
and it's basically it's boiled down and boiled down and boiled down and such concentrated vitamins, and it's warm. That is my number one. When Kate is really sick, I just drive straight down there. I get it to go. It's very inexpensive. It's like $6.50 for a big portion.
And what's it called?
Adele's Gumbo.
Adele's Gumbo.
Adele's Gumbo. They have it to go. They have a nice container that they'll send you off.
I say that's a perfect dish for the Super Bowl parties to prevent sickness.
Yeah,
Go
that's
down
not
to
a bad idea
Passports
at
and
all.
get the Adele's Gumbo.
Passports, Adele's Gumbo. Yeah. Oh, we should mention. I'm just gonna run through these a couple of events that are happening. We talked about Hale Street. So the Savour Wine and Cheese is having a wine and cheese tasting seminar, and that is going to be January 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. So when you go to get your bone marrow stuff, you can go and sign up for that.
It's tomorrow. Yeah.
It's tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
so if you're watching that right now, go check that
I
out.
can't believe it's that late in January
I
already.
know.
Yeah.
Tono is doing a Super Bowl catering. You can call. Actually,
It might be.
that's gone
Yeah.
by. You can't
Yeah.
order it anymore because they were doing it.
But we heard it went over really big.
We heard it went over. Oh, that's right.
Great job, Anthony Caterano.
Anthony
with the team.
Caterano.
Yeah.
January 30th, French wine dinner at Feather and Wedge. We talked about that, and I think that was all that I want. Okay, so we're good. So now we're gonna get back to. We're going what?
Heather is suggesting brodo. My kids call it magic soup.
Brodo. Yeah.
Sorry, I never heard of it. I didn't know what.
So brodo is like chicken soup, like the when you
Really?
make a chicken soup.
Get the broth.
The broth
stuff
is
in that.
brodo.
Okay.
Yeah. It's there. You go. See Heather Daigle.
Thank you,
She's a
Heather.
local.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, that's like every Italian household. That's what the mother makes: chicken soup.
I was just gonna say, when you're talking about this, I was getting flashbacks to my aunts, because there was 8 of us. My mom's home, and there was 8 of us, and the aunts came over, and if not one got it, we all got it. So everybody came over to help.
Yeah.
And I just remember trying all these different. This aunt saying, "Oh, you gotta do this," the garlic, wearing the garlic or putting the garlic out there so that would keep that going, and put the. I just remember all the different things.
Yeah, no, it's great. So there's that. We're gonna now. Ron was here 2 podcasts
Earlier.
ago.
Yeah.
And he was speaking. We spoke a lot about.
So interesting.
Very interesting.
I was watching, not from here, but obviously like everybody at home is watching, and I was very interested. So I'm actually that I get to sit right next to you now and see it live.
We had a conversation afterwards, and I invited him to come back on, and he was nervous about being overexposed, too much exposure, and people would get tired of him. And what my response to him was, there are certain topics that people can tire of potentially, and we hear that often, but Gloucester history is one of those topics that is universally loved. Anybody is interested in that. So I don't think that there's any chance of what he's going to be talking about for people to tire of. Like I know we
have to agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So there's that. So but he wanted to speak. He went back and he looked over his notes and listened to the podcast, and he wanted to follow up with some of the Cameron's history and W.A. Robinson shipbuilding in the 30s and 40s, and also more about the Crane Estate in Ipswich and its contribution to the fishing industry. So that's your cue, Ron.
Let's bring him
All right, so Ron, I want you to remind you, this is your camera.
There's your
this
camera.
is the
Talk to
camera.
you.
Okay. Just as Joey said, I went home and I listened to my little presentation the other day, and I said to myself, there's so much history that's associated or could be connected to Camerons of Gloucester. Not the Camerons that they're tearing down as I speak, or taking away the dunnage, but the Camerons that was there in 1945. So I said I'd really like to go back and add to or embellish what I talked about the other day. And it's a very interesting story. But in anything that I present, we talked about the Patriots today. We talked about the flu and their symptoms and remedies. And, I'm not a sportsman and other things. So But on the subject of history, when Scottie brought up about the Chamber of Commerce building and what was there before and so forth, that's kind of like my forte.
That's why we got you here.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so in reflecting on the whole thing, I want to tell you a couple of stories that have never been told, and in some cases they're backstories that some people prefer that they be put to bed. However, in researching my book, and I don't know more, back in 2001, it was published in 2006 or 7. I came upon this story about William A. Robinson. It's an interesting character, and he dates back to 1935 when Bill Robinson was a young man, and you must remember that in 1935, 36, 37, that was the era of the Great Depression. Wasn't a lot of work, and people were out of work and so forth. And Robinson, he was kind of a gay blade, kind of a devil-may-care guy, and he had an old sailboat, and he sailed to the South Seas. Well, he's sailing around, something happens to the boat, and he has to make a harbor, and he pulls into the harbor and for repairs or whatever. And while he's there and tied up or whatever, he meets a fellow by the name of Cornelius Crane, another young man. However, Crane is a little better financed than Robinson. But anyway, they become best friends.
What harbor? You said he pulled into a harbor. Which harbor?
I have no idea,
Okay,
Joey. But somewhere in the South Seas, as the story goes, well, Crane says, when we get back to the States, I'd like to invite you to my parents' summer home, and we'll have a little reception for you and so forth. So they did get back to the States, and the invitation was extended to Robinson, and Robinson arrived in Ipswich on the Crane estate. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the Crane estate, it's more than an estate. It's a
palace,
a palatial place. It's
do you know what year that was erected?
Yeah, that was right about 1936, 37.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, there's an orchestra and a buffet and whatever, the whole 9 yards. And Crane, of course, was the plumbing magnate. Cornelius's father, the senior Crane, was the Crane Plumbing. He was the General Motors of the plumbing industry.
You see the toilets to this day. You see the toilets all over the place.
Yes, that's right. So there was a lot of money there. And anyway, Bill Robinson met Cornelius's sister, Florence, and they became romantically entangled, and they eventually married. A few years went by, and all this is approximate. It's in the 30s, and they get married. And the father-in-law now says, your ambition was always to be a boat builder, and why don't we build a boatyard, a shipyard on the Crane estate? And of course, Robinson couldn't be happier, and they along comes the bulldozers and the excavating equipment, and they dig out an inlet right on Ipswich Bay on the Crane estate, and they named that Fox Creek. And then the elder Crane went ahead and built his new son-in-law, a first-class shipyard operation. Well, the war was coming. We could see the situation in Europe getting more dire as the days went by, and Robinson had built on this shipyard a couple sailing vessels. One he named after his wife, Florence Crane. It's a beautiful sailing vessel. And then in 1939, a Portuguese man from Gloucester, Manuel Rocha, which is another interesting story. But anyway, he engaged Robinson to build his first commercial fishing vessel for Gloucester, the Lady of Good Voyage. That was launched, and then the war soon was heating up, And Elder Crane, with his connections to the water department, saw to it that his new son-in-law might have an opportunity to bid on government vessels and things of that nature, vessels of that nature for the war effort that was coming. So the yard converted to totally building government vessels. Oh, that's my.
That's okay. You keep going, man.
So the yard transferred to government work, and by virtue of being in the government business, employees of Robinson's were deferred because they were involved in government work, and that allowed Robinson to go to Essex and rob all the shipwrights from Essex. They got deferments and so forth, and they were close to home. And the shipyard blossomed, and it operated 24/7, 3 shifts around the clock, and they built a lot of vessels. Well, just to as an aside, several years ago, this man called me. I was in the hospital with pneumonia, and I met my roommate. And it turns out he's a carpenter, and so we got talking about different things. And he said, "Gee," he says, "my father worked for Robinson Shipyard back in the 40s." And I said, "Oh, wonderful." So we talk about different stories and so forth. Well, anyway, several years later, only 5 years ago, I got a call. And he said, "I want to meet you down at the coffee shop on Bass Avenue. I have something for you." And my wife and I went down, and he gave me a bunch of pictures, 8x10 glossies, of the activity at Fox Creek in the 40s, the government vessels that were launched and so forth. So I brought them here this morning, and
Oh, awesome.
I'll
show you.
hold them up to the camera.
I'll show you these pictures. This is a launching at the Crane Estate in during World War II. And here's the vessels, the type of vessels that they were building.
Wow.
Look at all the people.
And this is another landing craft.
So this is a military craft
Yes, it's all military that were being
for the World War II.
for World War II at the Crane Estate. And here's another type of vessel that they built there, landing crafts.
I had no idea they were building ships there.
Yeah, it's a big operation. But they would prefer that you didn't know this, and I'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
And here's the Navy sends a band down, and they play at these.
Huh.
I do have one question, Ron. You said they prefer you didn't know it.
Yes.
But that last photo, not the one he just showed, the one previous, of all these people, and Scottie even said, "Wow, look at all those people." They kind of announced it, so everyone came to see it.
Well, these at any launching, it's a lot of family and a lot of workers and so forth. Yeah,
Let's bring that photo back up.
that was a big operation.
You talking about that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So look at all the
So-
people that are here for this.
So anyway,
That was some big. That was a lot of people for something.
Well,
So-
supporting war effort was a popular.
so in my research, I'm showing you the production that was going on in the 40s. But in my research for my book in 2002, I was really interested in this whole operation. And where do you go? I went to the library in Ipswich, my wife and I, and I noticed a reluctance on the part of the librarians and the people that work there to even talk about this whole episode.
Really?
Well, in furthering my investigation, it turns out that Florence Crane and her husband, William A. Robinson, got divorced at about just after World War II, and it wasn't a pleasant situation.
That wasn't real common in those days either, was that?
No, it wasn't. No. So anyway, Robinson's activity as a shipyard in his father-in-law's property was terminated. And if you visit the Crane estate today, it's a lawn over there, and it never existed because overnight they tore the buildings down and so forth and so on.
Is it marked on current maps where Fox Creek is?
No, I don't think so. No.
Do you think that's why they're...
However, the evidence is right down the street, one of the things, because at Beacon Marine Basin, Robinson, by the way, in 1944, and that's a story I talk about with Cameron's Cafe, built 12 vessels for Gloucester, 11 commercial fishing vessels, and an oil tanker, which I talked to you about the other day. Well, Robinson, when he was thrown out, if you will, from the property, the Crane estate, he reestablished himself just down the street in the Beacon Marine Basin, which is Alexander's property. But in those days, it was the Booth Fisheries, much like this was Gorton's property, and Booth had a big flake yard there and so forth. And Robinson, after his divorce, bought Booth Fisheries and converted it to Robinson's Marine Basin. And he brought down the crane from the shipyard in Ipswich, and that crane is over at Alexander's today. That big crane.
That big crane was in operation in the 40s?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a great story.
Good Gloucester gold right here.
It's gold, I told you. That's why we got to have him on here before he dies on us.
Now, that's right. And that's why I want to be here.
I know. We talk about this all the time. So wait a second. Can I ask you a question? One question.
Sure.
Is the Mrs. Robinson that was on Eastern Point? Is she?
No, I don't.
Do you know who I was talking?
No.
Okay.
But anyway, and also inside of, and that's funny, I talked with Jack Alexander only a couple of weeks ago at the building center. He's a great guy, and he's younger than I am, so he was only a toddler.
Jeez,
probably like Connor, your stepson.
I thought you guys were the same age.
No, he's younger. Jack is only a boy, but Jack is a good kid, and I talked with Jack, and inside the Beacon Marine Basin, interesting, there's the longest lathe in the city. It's 40 feet long, and it came from the Ipswich shipyard of Robinson's.
Can you explain what a lathe is?
Inside this building over here, it's so big and so cumbersome and not needed that it's been resting there as a junk of iron for decades.
Can you explain what a lathe is?
Oh, a lathe. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
A lathe is a turning machine. It's used to finish shafts, mainly propeller shafts, and they come in various lengths, up to 40 feet, at least for this lathe. There isn't much in the fishing fleet in Gloucester that requires anything bigger, but in those days it required big lathes, vessels, all of which were built. Many of which were built at Robinson Shipyard, but that became the place where Robinson was moved to, if you will. And all the 11 vessels that he built in 1944 were all finished at Robinson's Marine Basin on East Main Street. Now, one of the vessels I talked about was the Emily Brown the other day. I went back to my, handle this carefully, Joey. This is the dust cover on my book, and I don't know more, but that's the original, that's where the picture came from.
And what year was this boat built?
This boat was built, they were all of the boats were built in 1944, with the exception of Lady Good Voyage, which was the first one back in 1939. His last year, you see, World War II ended in 1945, but by 1943, the government saw the end in sight, and the pipeline was filled full of government vessels. So in 1943, they stopped ordering government things, and Robinson, in the throes of a divorce and Gloucester, starving for fishing vessels, the demand was there. All these fishing vessels, the 11 fishing vessels, were ordered at once, and Robinson's operating a 24-hour a day work schedule. They were able to turn out all these vessels in one year.
That's amazing.
So yes, when you compare it with an Essex-built vessel, it takes about 9 months. It took about 9 months to build one vessel.
So let me ask you a question on the
Sure.
on the vessels. You said it was 11 vessels. Now, were they made for private entity or
No, they were commercial fishing vessels.
commercial?
In this
fishing?
case,
So privately, individually owned, or for Gordon's company, or
well, they were individual for the most part, individually owned, as this one was. Captain Frank Brown owned this vessel, and
how many feet were the? How many?
this
foot
was this vessel was 95 feet.
95 feet. Wow.
And believe me, I took a personal tour with my uncle when I was only 1944. I was 11 years old, and my uncle.
And what was the ship built out of? What type of materials?
Oak. Well, mainly oak. It's a
Oak.
wooden vessel.
Wooden vessels. Okay.
All these vessels were all wood that were built there, with the exception of the oil tanker Captain Dave, which of course is steel and is still in existence today. Well, anyway, I got thinking about the Emily Brown and the Cameron's Cafe, because you see, Captain Frank Brown was also the owner of Cameron's Cafe, Cameron's Barroom, if you will, on Main Street, which they just tore down the new Cameron's, not his business place, but Captain Frank. Look, you have to understand the times we lived in. It was 1945 when the Chamber of Commerce building was built also. So
On Main Street.
On
The original building.
I
I heard the original
Which
was on
one?
Main Street. Is that
Yes,
not
it
right?
was down by the curtain shop, but that was a rented facility, a
Okay.
storefront. Then they moved from there, I don't know where, and they finally got to Commercial Street. But the building they're in today and renovating and building was built in 1945 by another entrepreneur, if you will, Larry McEwen, who was the sales manager for the Cooper Bessemer Company, the regional sales manager, and he built that building as a sales office.
And where is that located?
The one that's being renovated right now at Harbor
For
Loop.
the people watching.
Oh, the one that's being renovated at Harbor Loop today, where originally was the Cooper Bessemer office, sales office for the North Atlantic region, if you will.
And most recently has been Captain
Whale
Bill's
Watch.
Captain Bill's Whale Watch
Yes.
has been headquartered there for
That's
quite a while, and Cape Ann Oil. I think the office is for
And
Cape
that's
Ann
right
Oil.
adjacent to the Fitzhugh Lane House?
On the inside. It's probably, is it the only other? Yeah, anyway.
On that side.
So if I could just, just to get back to my wife and I researching the history of William A. Robinson Shipyard, we went to the library in Ipswich, and as soon as I mentioned the William A. Robinson era, it visibly they clammed
ear
up,
got
if you will.
chilled.
They did not want to discuss this. The Crane people, the people in Ipswich, would like to just forget that whole chapter because of the divorce type situation. In the end, it was not a pleasant thing. So there was a lot of reluctance. But however, after several visits, this elderly lady took Joan and I down to the basement, and we went into a vault type arrangement, and she produced some newspaper articles and other memorabilia, and you have to reconstruct your story. The details I'm not exactly. It's not an exact story, but that basically is what it was. There was ill feeling and so forth. That's why I say the town of Ipswich would prefer, or the people in Ipswich would prefer, that we just forget about Robinsons. However, it was a very important era. Now, Captain Frank Brown was a very successful fishing skipper. The Portuguese fleet was very successful in those days, and when they made money, they reinvested and so forth. So as an investment, he bought Cameron's Cafe, even though he was fishing on his vessel, the Emily Brown. Cameron's Cafe was you could say, a Portuguese gathering place for captains and fishermen of the day. And they gathered there. It was just a really nice place, and I was always impressed with it. I have been since the early days. Well, anyway, Gloucester, as we all know, sponsors the schooner races on Labor Day, and there's a lot of rivalry and so forth. Well, that's an extension of the schooner races of back in the 20s and the 1900s, and we all know that history. Historians have talked about it for many, many years, but we've always had a rivalry facet of the fishing industry, racing. It happened in Cameron's Cafe back in 1945. The Emily Brown was all the 11 vessels from Ipswich were all in existence. Most of them found homes in Gloucester. Some were built for Fulton Fish Market and so forth. But anyway, they mostly were built by Portuguese fishermen. They found Ipswich a place to go, and all the vessels that were built at Robinson Shipyard were all architecturally designed, and they were state-of-the-art for what they were. They were the Cadillacs of the day, the best. And Robinson had the best tradesmen, so they built the best vessels. Well, in going through my things yesterday, I found this picture, and this is one of the vessels that was built in Essex, in Ipswich. Now, the background on that vessel, the fishing vessel FV, fishing vessel Estrella.
Rocky Neck?
Yes, that's going out the harbor.
Horton Street.
This was the biggest vessel that was built in 1944 at the shipyard. And Joaquim Gasper, the captain and owner, a Portuguese man, was, he was ahead of his time, and he wanted the best. And his family had been building vessels since the 20s, early 20s. This represents probably a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, or seventh vessel that he had ownership of, and so forth. At the time, in 1944, this was his flagship, and it was the city's flagship. It was powered by a 600 horsepower Atlas heavy-duty Imperial diesel engine that came in on a freight car from Oakland, California, up to our local depot. The 600 horsepower engine in those days was considered the Cadillac, and it was the most power of any vessel in the harbor. She had more power than any other vessel. Well, Joaquim Gasper's in Cameron's, and he's bragging about his new vessel, and she really goes fast and so forth. And there was another captain there, another Portuguese man, captain by the name of Bob Freilich. And Bob Freilich, as I remember him, I put water on all these vessels, so I know them closely. Anyway, Bob was a gentleman. He looked, to me, he looked like a Greek god, handsome Portuguese, and a nice gentleman too. He was the captain of a fishing vessel by the name of the Ciro. And there's the Ciro. The background on the Ciro is The background on the Ciro is that she was built in Rhode Island in a shipyard that was had a one-man owner. He was the only guy that that worked on this vessel. He built this vessel single-handedly.
Oh my God.
When a heavy work was, he recruited somebody to help them. But it was said at the time that there was enough there was more rejected wood on the side of the shipyard than what the wood that went into the vessel. He was a meticulous guy, and he wanted nothing but the best. And this vessel was built in that day for General Seafoods of Boston. And she come out, her original name was the Blow, B-L-O-W. Blow, Squall, Calm. That was some of the vessels they had. This one was, but it was the smallest. She didn't carry a lot of fish, and she was powered with a 350 horsepower Cooper Bessemer engine. Now, the Atlas and the Cooper Bessemer were the engines of choice in those days. They were the Cadillacs, but the Cooper Bessemer was considered even better, and it was more expensive. The salesman and the New England representative of the Cooper Bessemer Company was Captain Larry McEwen. I say captain because he was a fourth striper in the United States Navy Reserve, and he opened the Chamber of Commerce office on Duncan Street, Harbor Loop. His previous location was next to the Empire Fish Company on the lot after the building center.
He didn't open it as the Chamber of Commerce. He opened it as
opened it as
the
he had it built.
Sales office for the Cooper Bessemer. Right.
Yeah, he had a demonstration engine in there, and a parts department, and he had several employees, at least of which was a gal by the name of Isabel Gray. And Isabel Gray, when he was activated in the service, Isabel Gray ran the whole operation, and she was a gal Friday personified. She's number one person, personal friend of mine, and I interviewed her for my book and so forth. And just as an aside, she told me that it was such a prosperous era that captains would come in to order engines, and if they said, well, the engine's $28,000, oh, that's okay, order up. Price was not an option. It just because the industry, what we see today compared to that. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Bob Frelick's in the Camerons, and in comes Gasper, and he says, "Oh, and by the way, the Curl went to Boston for General Seafoods, and because the Atlantic Fishermen's Union at the time was so strong in Boston, they required 17 men to go aboard the Curl. Well, she only carried about 170,000 redfish, or haddock, or codfish, or whatever. Not enough to make it worthwhile for 17 men. So essentially, the Union discouraged this vessel, and because Larry McEwen was selling all the engines, Cooper Bessemers, to the General Seafoods fleet in Boston, the owners of the hierarchy in General Seafood said to Larry, "Listen, this has got your engine in it. Why don't you buy this boat and take it to Gloucester and see what you can do with it? We can't make it financially up here because of the Union." So Larry acquired this boat. He had a boat before that, the Golden Eagle. There were two, the Golden Eagle. Now he had the Blow, which he renamed the Curl when she came to Gloucester. So Bob Frelick's the skipper, and this is the fastest boat in the harbor. This thing,
the Curlew, but not the Estrella.
The Curlew was the fastest thing in the harbor.
Even though the Curlew had a 300 horsepower engine, and the other one had a 600.
600. So
but it was that much bigger. The Estrella was that much bigger.
Yes, well, it's not that much bigger, but
300 to 350 to 600, you would think that there would be a big advantage.
Yes, that's right. Yes, you would. Well, however, the design of the Estrella and the configuration of this Blow Curl was totally different back aft. This one had an elliptical stern, and there were reasons for her speed. But she had a 350 Cooper Bessemer. This guy had a 600 Atlas. In comes Gasper and he says, "I challenge you to a race." And
these are powered. This isn't a sailboat race. This isn't schooners. These are powered vessels.
Powered vessels. So the arrangements, it's an interesting story. So they agreed to race, and they're going to race to Thatcher's Island.
From where? From where?
From 10 Pound Island, they were going to Thatcher's.
Wow.
Okay. So it was going to.
Yeah, I love this. I'm dying to hear
It was going to happen at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So.
What were the stakes? Do you know what the stakes were?
No, it was just. I don't know what the stakes were, but.
Wasn't a pink slip.
What's that?
Wasn't a pink slip.
No. So the crew is waiting on station by the island. The engine's going. Now the crew had, as an aside, the crew had one of the best engineers in the city. I looked him up this morning, and his name was Gerard Rio. I went to school with his daughter Priscilla. She married a Cunningham, and so forth and so on. Priscilla's still with us today, and they lived on Point Hill. And Gerard Rio was master mechanic. He could squeeze every ounce of power out of anything. So he's the engineer on the curlew. Along comes the Estrella. Gasper has got that 600 horsepower engine wide open. He tears by the curlew that's in neutral, idling. Gerard Rio, they give him one bell to go ahead. He gives them one bell, he pulls it. Another bell to jingle it up, and then the jingle, which is like a buzzer, that means wide open. And Gerard put it right, the metal, pedal to the metal, and the curlew is following behind the Estrella. They go by the breakwater, and the curlew is right on the tail of that Estrella. They get by the breakwater, a little sea room, and the curlew pulls ahead of the Estrella and pulls ahead. By the time they got to Thatcher's Island, the Estrella was way behind, and the next morning it was out of sight. They were gone. The curlew won the race, and the Estrella got beat.
Even though the boats were not that size-wise were not huge difference, but the curlew had a 350 horsepower engine, and the Estrella had a 600 horsepower engine.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, it was a big thing in those days. It was. And,
I'm sure.
And of course, the Estrella was first class. There was nothing. Joaquin Gasper built probably 10 vessels in his lifetime, and all his vessels were showpieces. That's one thing about the Portuguese. They spared no horses when it came to their vessels. They were the best and so forth. So
I
anyway,
have to take a break for a second, just for a restroom break. I could not leave because that was so interesting, and I had to find out who won before I took my little break here.
Go right ahead.
I'll be right back. I want to hear some more.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you one little anecdote in relation to the way that the Estrella approached that race. How he steamed by him while the guy was in neutral.
Yeah.
If you ever, when you go to the sailboat races for the St. Peter's Fiesta, some people are on the beach and they can't understand why it takes so long to get those races started. There's 3 coxsmen, and they're in charge of the 3 boats are lined up on the beach, facing towards the flags, where they have to race 2, turn around, and come back and hit the beach. Well, they instruct the crews to put the tips of their oars in to try to get an edge, to try to feather the boats forward towards the flags. And the coxsman, his job is when they think that they have a little bit of an advantage, or at least fair, they'll put their hand up to the race starter saying, okay, we're ready to go. Now, they won't start the race until all 3 coxsmen, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, all have their hands up in the air, and then he'll signal the race to start. But there's so much jockeying that it may take 20 minutes to get the race started.
We saw that last year. We saw that there was at
I
least.
assume they were trying to get an advantage.
Yeah,
They're trying to.
three or four
They're feathering some of the boats. They're feathering their oars into the water to try to get momentum going forward. And if one of the crews seems that they're definitely not in position to start the race, they'll actually turn the boat, like, and make it so that there's no way that they would start it. You know, it's kind of interesting that the Estrella, he approached the race with a head of steam there.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about the Estrella. She was an absolutely beautiful vessel. And as I say, in 1944, I was 11 years old, and I was on a boat called Waterboat in the harbor, delivering water to all these vessels. So John Winterberg, who owned the Wynnum Lake, the waterboat, lived on Plum Street, and I had an occasion to go over to Kim Smith's house one day with a book, and across the street was John Winterberg's house. John Winterberg was a widower, and he had kept a widower's home, and he didn't eat too well, and so forth and so on. He's an elderly man, and he's running this waterboat, which is out of sync with the times, and I'm the little kid aboard there that's helping him. So John would take the waterboat over and tie it up at Booth's Wharf, which was Robinson's Marine Basin, and walk up Plum Street, have his lunch, and have a little nap, and then come down Plum, go aboard the boat, and come across the harbor to Gorton's of Gloucester, which was on that side of the harbor. They're another part of their business. And I'd be waiting for him. Well, in those days, the vessels dried their nets, and they had to haul them up to the top of the spar to dry out, and it created like a hammock. So as a little kid, waiting for the waterboat to come from across the harbor, I laid in that net like a hammock, and I'm waiting, and I can hear the engine on the waterboat come put, 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 coming across the harbor. And just at the right time, horns blared all over the harbor. Startled me, right? Well, it was the Estrella coming from the fitting out dock, Robinson's, coming over to United Fisheries, which is where that laboratory is today on East
Good
Main
morning,
Street.
Gloucester, too.
That's
morning.
where United Fisheries facility was, and that was a Portuguese wharf. And the Estrella was coming over, and I can see her now, the only vessel in the whole fleet, so reminiscent of Joaquin Gasper, painted all white. She was just like a yacht, and the gang, the crew were all there, and it was just an unbelievable thing. It's just a memory I have.
Well, there you go.
So,
well, thank you so much for that.
That's awesome.
I appreciate.
that's all I can tell you today, Joseph.
Well, we're just gonna keep ramping up these stories week in and week out and try to get them all recorded.
Yes, I if I may, I like, the last probably 7 or 8 years, I've attempted to put this information down because while I'm not an authority, I'm the last guy standing, and all the noted historians in the city of Gloucester have all passed on. They left behind books and so forth, which we were fortunate to have. But I have personal knowledge of this era, and it was the golden age of fishing, and I'm attempting to record it in my blog, videos, and
the Gloucester
so forth.
I love two online.
Joe, I'm about to steal this guest of yours for personal use, if you don't mind, because I'm gonna give you an invite, an official invite. So I do the narration on the Beauport Cruise Line for the senior tours during the daytime for the lobster bakes. And I point out different points of interest around the harbor. Would you be interested? Could I please have you out one day?
Wait till I tell you.
Okay.
My wife, we had visitors come from out of town, and at the time, there was a duck. That's a World War II amphibious craft that was operating at the end of Pavilion Beach between the tavern and the boulevard. And I said to Joan, I said, it'd be nice if we take our visitors on this duck and they give a tour around the harbor. Well, we got on the duck and we pulled off from the beach and we're going along, and there's this young lady, probably 18 or 20, and she's got the microphone and she's narrating this tour. Well, she was, I know she meant well, and she certainly wasn't dishonest. but she was telling facts that were off the wall. And with the place, the boat had about
I'm just going to hand my microphone.
Yeah,
I'm scared to
there you go.
have you on
You've
board
got-
now.
right.
That's probably what I'm doing.
the boat had about 40 people on. Finally, I said, "Would you mind if I take that microphone from you?" She passed it to me,
It's
and
all
I,
yours.
Probably
and I
grateful.
narrated
Grateful.
the tour. And that's the
Well, God
truth
bless
of the story,
you.
Okay.
I would love to have
Anyway.
you on as a special guest if you'd
Well,
like to
I'll tell you
accept.
one more story. I was involved with the adventure I was involved with the adventure in 1987 when we brought her here from
Camden, Maine.
she was at Camden, but we brought her. She was in mothballs at Bath, Maine, and we took her down the Kennebec River into Gloucester. Jim Sharp was the owner, skipper. He was giving it to us, and I was on the original adventure committee. So we were allowed, he had his own crew that were going to bring the vessel down. But I was, being on the board of directors, Garland said, "You're in charge of taking the Gloucester contingent," which were members of the board, as a complimentary thing from him, as he said. And he made me the captain of my little contingent. Well, there was a reason for it. He didn't want to. There were so many volunteers. He put me in charge so that I could say no to all these people. Yeah. Anyway,
Bad guy.
we came down from Camden, Maine, and we brought the boat here and so forth and so on. And $5 million later, and 30 years later, a friend that we gave the roof job to, the organist.
The organ maker?
Yeah.
CB Fisk?
No,
Hammond?
the guy that worked for him. You called me and wanted a name of a roofer, and he worked for...
Hank?
No, he worked for CB Fisk. Anyway, he's involved.
Greg Bover?
Yes, that's the guy. Great, nice
I didn't know
guy.
he was a roofer.
No, he wasn't. He asked you for the name of a roofer, and I gave it to you. Craig Bover.
Greg Bover, yeah. Good
Great guy.
Great guy.
He's fired up and he's interested in the adventure. So he said to me 3 years ago, he says, "Ron, you were on that adventure in the very beginning. I'd like to have you on Wednesday. It's the day that the members of the association can and their guests can go for free for sale, and I'd like to invite you on." I says, "Well, now it's been many years since I've been aboard that vessel and so forth." So I said to my wife, "Well, I'll get down." So around 3:00 in the afternoon, we were going to leave the wharf, and I went down, and there were probably 25 or 30 people, directors and so forth. Well, as it turned out, we pulled out from the wharf, and there wasn't a breath of air. And of course, for interest, they raised the sails, and we fortunately had a little donkey engine there. She has a little GM in her that pushes her along. And anyway, well, as it turned out, the captain came forward and at the break, and the crew members and the guests and so forth, and I wound up giving them the speech on the adventure and all that type of thing. So, what can I say? Yes, I've done that before.
Thank you very
So
much.
anyway,
Thank you.
that's the story.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, there you go. So I think we can wrap it up right here. Pat, did you have anything else
I'm good.
to add? All right, I'll add stuff into the show notes with links. I put a link to Ron's blog. Listen, as much as Ron can speak, there is an absolute treasure trove of information and photos on his blog, The Gloucester I Love Too, and there is a link. There will be a link in the show notes for you to be able to find it. And if you don't want to do that, you can go to your Google machine and type in The Gloucester I Love Too, and that'll bring you there as well. Ron, thank you so much for coming. Jimmy, Scottie, Pat,
Joey.
your host
you.
Joey
I
Ciaramitaro.
hope,
Scottie, nice meeting you.
Ron, yes, my pleasure.
Thank you, Ron.
nice to see